Just give me another minute. Okay, I got that volume off. Welcome, everybody. Okay, we got you guys on. I think we are all set. Just to hit record. Wow, I'm being such a good boy. I'm getting everything. So I hope today's an interesting class for y'all. We're going to be talking about it's called Judaism versus religion. So a lot of people make the grave error of calling Judaism a religion, and it's not really that big an error, because after all, there's a lot of religious Jews in the world. Back when I was a young man at Aish Torah, and I didn't realize that black hatitude Jews, like the ultra Orthodox they call them, I didn't realize that they're so religious. I thought they were like me, and later I found out that they're very religious. And so I thought when I became observant. Do you notice that I said when I became observant, and I didn't say when I became religious? You got that? Because I never became religious. I'm still not religious. Religion is like responsible for all the disasters of all of history. And if you look at Jewish history, you just won't find us on that long list of disasters. I mean, we suffered a lot of disasters. We went through a lot of hell, but can't be we're religion, because religions usually cause hell for people. It's funny, a lot of people think religion created hell, but it's very well said. Meaning they made life on earth hell. For so many persecuted people in the name of some religion. Judaism, on the other hand, is very libertarian. What's up, Dylan? Very libertarian. Noach. They make people actually I guess it's kind of obvious, given that that Judaism is where you get the creation of Adam, and once you have the creation of Adam, obviously that's the point of it all. It's not groups, it's not this group or this that group, it's not communism, not socialism, it's not capitalism, it's not patriotism, it's not any of that stuff. It's the power of the individual, and any amount of governing of those individuals where it encroaches upon the freedom of the individual is already anti-Torah at that point. And the law, it's important. We have laws. You got to have law, but it has to be laws that you can trace each law to the betterment of mankind in general. So, for example, you can't tell me not to drive. You can't tell me not to drive, right? Would everyone agree I should not be told not to drive? Yeah. So the answer is, what's up, Chaim Shalom? What's this? But you can tell me not to drive, and you should tell me not to drive. You know when that is? When the people going in the opposite direction, on the other direction, have a green light. You should tell me not to drive, and I should keep that rule. But other than that, leave me alone. So how does it work out? We learn from Genesis that the human being is created in the image of God. Don't mess with human beings. Don't mess with them. Individuals, I'm talking about. Don't start creating group mentality. Don't start creating, what do they call it? Group identity. We're this group and we're that group. No, individuals. And the incredible nuclear power plant that every individual is. Now, everyone's going to crash into each other. Okay, create lights and make some rules around it so that we don't die. because I don't want to die either. I'm hoping other people are going to stop when they hit their red line, and they're hoping I'm going to stop, and we can all agree that there's certain things. I would love it if that Steve Martin was the actor Steve Martin, but whoever you are, Steve Martin, that joined our group, welcome. I'm a big Steve Martin fan. Anyway, but that's human rights. I was at the sauna recently, and in New York, and some Hasidim said to me, "What do I think about the vaccine?" Because they're all, the Hasidim in New York don't want to take the vaccine, and also in Lakewood. So, and here either, by the way, people aren't very interested in the vaccine over here, at least of the observant Jews. The Hasidim, sorry, the Hasidim. Everyone else is like all over it. They're like, I think they're putting vaccine in their cereal otherwise. But what do I want to tell you about? Oh yeah, so they were asking me in the Schwitz about what my thoughts were about the vaccine. I said, you're worried about the vaccine, brother. I said, vaccine's the least of your problems. Your problem is that your entire lifestyle, your kids' lifestyle, your parents' lifestyle, your siblings' lifestyle, your entire community's lifestyle is 100% dependent upon the founding fathers of America that tried a unique experience that you leave people the hell alone. And you're worrying about a vaccine, like you are so not American, bro. You don't even speak English properly, and you were raised here. Like you're the first person they're going to get rid of. And if our liberty is based on their emergency, which is like such a joke now that Omicron's here, it's like nice emergency, guys. But if based on your emergency, we all have to lose our individual liberties. So then our lifestyle's at stake now. And Jews never did well in any situation where there was normal political bodies set up. Meaning this is the only time with this experiment of our modern democracies is the only time ever in our whole history as a nation that we did okay. First time, like the last, 70 years since the war. But the thing is when you're used to like blocking 14th Avenue, 48th and 14th in front of Bubba while we're all doing Kiddush Levana, and, we're sanctifying the moon, and the cars are like, in United States of America, New York City, are playing an obstacle course around all the Jews sanctifying the moon, because you got to go out in the street to do it, and there's hundreds of us. So we don't realize, because you get so used to living your life that way, you don't realize that it's a miracle of the first time ever that they allowed government by the people, for the people, by the people. Liberty. And so it's not about vaccines. Vaccines is a money thing. It's just a money thing. It's nice if it really keeps people from dying. That'd be great. But God has a sense of humor. He had the virus mutate into something that doesn't kill anyone. So it's like, okay, now what? So first of all, you told us that we won't get the virus if we take the vaccine. Okay, that's not true. Then you told us we won't transmit it. Okay, that's not true. Then you told us that, well, you won't die. Well, that's not true, because you're not going to die without the vaccine for this virus. And so it's like, get off our back at this point. Leave everybody alone. And let's see where this is all going. No more pressure. But they're not going to stop pressuring, because this has nothing to do with the virus. This is clearly this technology was around. I know everyone wants to believe that they created this overnight. They didn't create it overnight. They created the volume of doses overnight. That they did fast. You want to give them something? They created the doses quickly, and they created the volume. Anytime there's a technology ready to hit the world, you just need the reason to have it hit the world. But it's going to hit the world. You can't prevent it from hitting the world because it's ready. That's why, we should all be a little nervous about the metaverse, that people are going to start living their lives digitally instead of in real time, because the technology's arrived. It's not perfected yet, but it's here. And, I've heard parents have called me and said, can you help me with my kid? My kid said that they don't want to have regular relationships anymore. They just want to live the character that they've created inside their computer. They have children who have said they do not want to have three-dimensional relationships anymore. They're done. They want to be the character they created online with giant muscles or super beautiful and voluptuous, and that's who they want to be. And they're happier that way. And so this is all created already. Facebook's already changed its name to Meta for the metaverse, meaning it's not like this is it's not like this is some future issue. This is what's happening now. In fact, WhatsApp's owned by the company that's created this. And you can already buy real estate meaning you can start building your home, because people are already designing cool stuff for your home that you can only really get in the home that you'll virtually live in if you buy this stuff. So people are already, it's a whole thing. You can buy a home already and live there. So it's, anyway, let's go back to our subject. So our subject is religion versus Judaism. And religion hasn't done really a very big favor to individual liberty, to the liberty of individuals. It's group mentality, and it's generally created, as I said before, disaster for anyone who is not willing to be part of it. I know that each religion speaks about peace and love and all that stuff, but all you got to do is look at the track record. Just look at the track record. Now, obviously, when it comes to, like, let's say Christians and Jews, the majority of Jews have no idea what the Christians did to us, but anyone who's an observant Jew, don't expect them to be so easygoing about Christianity. The observant Jews have very long-term memory. The rest of the world, it's like 3 days is about the length of the memory, and the media counts on you forgetting everything they said a couple of days earlier, especially the last 2 years when everything flip-flops every couple of days. But I don't recall if I made a bracha. Did anyone hear me make a bracha? I made a bracha? Yeah. But the observant Jews have very long-term memory. For observant Jews, the Holocaust was like an hour ago. The Crusades of what we went through under, the absolute insane massacres. I mean, the Christian made the Nazis look gentle. Like when I say the word Black Sabbath, if you're not observant, you're thinking of a rock band. If you are observant, you're thinking of Worms, Mainz, and Speyer, 3 massive Jewish communities along the Rhine River of Germany that were filled with the greatest scholars of all time. I mean, the oral law was really coming through there from the Temple times, through that area of the Rhine River in Germany. And in one Shabbos, every man, woman, and child was dead in one Shabbos. And it's called Black Sabbath. And there's actually Germans. Tradition is not to dress up on that Shabbos, not to dress Shabbosdik on that Shabbos. They wear weekday clothing on that Shabbos. So yeah, if you're a secular Jew, it's a rock band because your memory is about 3 days long. But if you're an observant Jew, the Crusades were Okay, if the Holocaust was an hour ago, the Crusades were like yesterday. We have a strong memory for what we've been through, and it's almost always at the hands of religions. Now, but this isn't about what Jews have been through. It's like, I mean, they've torn each other to bits. Tell me, when did Jews tear anyone to bits? So people would want to say, oh, well, when you had to come into the land of Israel. What? The promised land? It's called the promised land. It's not called the promised land for nothing. It's called the promised land because it was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the fact that there were nations living there is so it wouldn't get overrun with wild animals, because the Jews were going to be coming to the land. And there's a ratio of human settlement to wild animals. You don't have enough people, they get eaten. You have enough people, the animals keep their distance. But had no one lived in the land of Israel between Abraham's promise and 6 generations, the Jews come in. It's only 6 generations, by the way. It's not a long time. Abraham to Sinai, Mount Sinai, is 6 generations. It's not a big time. It was promised to Abraham. And 6 generations later, we came to inherit the land. And guess what we had to do with the Canaanite nations? We had to offer them, first of all, they could peacefully leave. No fight at all. And one of those nations chose to just go. Another thing, they could peacefully stay, but they have to keep the 7 laws of Noah, which are, just basically standard morality. Keep the 7, go to heaven. And they can stay. Or then the third was they could fight if they want to fight. And one chose to stay, one chose to go, and the rest chose to fight. And that didn't go so hot for them, let's say. But, then again, you're going against a nation who could, you could throw the spear or you could not throw the spear. It was still going to fly into the enemy. Like you could just sit and watch, as the Torah says, Vatem tacharishun, that the Jewish people can just be silent and watch the magic happen as we got the land. But you should know that the Torah commanded us not to remove them in one day because the wild animals would take over the land. So we had a 7-year system that during those 7 years, there would be those nations, the 7 Canaanite nations, would move their way out over 7 years so that the wild animals wouldn't take over the land. What is the difference between religion and Judaism? Did I just say that? I'm sorry. Let's try that again. What is the difference between religion and a cult? What's the difference between a religion and a cult? You ever thought about that before? The difference between religion and cult? Well, guess what the answer is? Number of people. That's the difference. Meaning, if we were hiking in the woods, we were hiking in the woods and we see a cave, and inside that cave we hear noise or whatever. And then we look in the cave, we peek into the cave, and we see 9 people bowing down to one person standing like this. And they're all saying, "You are our God," or whatever. Now, would you say that we found a religion or a cult? Which one? That would be a cult. So then we hike back down to our little village over there, our town. But after a while, you're looking around the town, you start to see, oh my gosh, I think the guy serving ice cream in the ice cream store, he was one of those people, wasn't he? And then you're like, that guy buying screws in the hardware store was also one of them. Start realizing, hey, these guys are around. We got a cult inside our city. Okay, no big deal. Except what happens? They told 2 friends, and they told 2 friends. Now it's 9, now it's 100, now it's 200. Now you can't even get a job in your town if you're not part of it. You're certainly not going to get an office And that's called socioeconomic pressure. Social is to be able to govern, and economic is to get a job and do business. Is you got to be, you're going to have to be part of it. And so there's a certain number of people based on a population where when it's really small, it's called a cult. But as it grows, it eventually develops a legitimizing term called religion. Religion is the legitimizing term you give an oversized cult. Now, think about it. Take any world religion today and bring it down to 10 people, you got a cult. Any world religion today. Take it down to 10 people, you got a cult. And what are they believing? Well, each one believes something else, but they're always believing a person. There's always a someone you have to believe. Think about it. The foundation of all those religions, every one of them, the foundation is you got to believe that someone's telling the truth, that someone's not lying there. Well, why would I believe that they're telling the truth? Why would I believe that? Well, I wouldn't. Unless maybe there's a fear factor. What if I introduce a fear factor? Well, what would the fear factor be? Well, there's two things people are really afraid of. One of them is death. That's a big fear factor. And the other fear factor is what happens after death. Sorry, I didn't say that right. Let's go back. I somehow created two fears. You have to create a fear factor. And what's the one thing people one thing I said two. I'm still getting over two bishvat. What is the one thing that human beings are the most scared of? I gave it away already. What was it? Death. And so if that's the thing that people are the most afraid of, what if I scare the living daylights out of them of what's in store for them if they're not part of my religion, and what's in store for them if they are? What if I just play with the one thing you cannot prove me wrong with? Now, if you're intelligent, you just say to me, hello, like, have you ever, maybe you ought to go to university in marketing and sales, because you're not supposed to shoot right to my greatest fear. You're supposed to actually give me a sense that I'm actually dealing with facts, not fear. Facts are how I make choices. You guys make choices based on facts or fear. Which one? Warren, give a thumbs up for facts. Okay. There are choices we make for fear, but you don't want those to be the big ones. If your big choices are fear, oh yeah, I'm to marry her because my parents told me to, because I'm afraid what I'll have to deal with if I said no. You're going to make a life, you're going to choose that? Shlomi, that's the way you're going to choose, based on a fear, a life decision? No way would you ever choose a life decision based on fear. You might choose to wear a seatbelt based on fear. You might choose to keep the speed limit, stay in your lane based on fear. You might learn how to look over your shoulder, your blind spot, before you change lanes based on fear. Micro stuff, fear. Macro stuff, facts. This is my life, man. I got to spend, yeah, that's nice that you're letting me know about what's going to happen after I die, because, God knows what's going to be there. But maybe there's nothing there, and I got to spend the next 50 years of my life with some random laundry list of what I got to do and not do, based on the fear that you may be right. Well, who the hell are you? And also, who the hell are you that would put anything having to do with afterlife in our first 100 conversations? The fact that you want to bring that up early in the relationship is already very, very suspicious. You understand? You're going to start with facts. You're going to start with fear. If you were trying to influence somebody, you start with facts or fear. The answer, well, if you got facts, you start with facts. If you ain't got facts, you start with fear. It's that simple. Well, isn't it interesting, the following, what I'm about to say? Now, any of you people ever learned at Aisha Torah for a period of time? Any of you learned there? Anyone on this group? No one here learned at Aisha Torah for a period. Max, did you ever learn there for a period of time? I don't know if you. Yeah, a little while. Okay, so we'll use Max, even though it was only a little while. But the same answer Max is going to give for the same answer he's going to give for his little time there. I've asked this many times for guys who I said, who's learned here the longest? So a guy raises his hand. He said, I'm learning here 15 years. And he's going to answer the same thing you're going to ask for a short period of time. Max, did you hear a class talking about the afterlife, like hell and heaven, meaning what you get for being a good boy? Did you ever hear a class based on that? Or did you even hear it brought up at Aisha Torah?
No, but maybe I wasn't there long enough.
Maybe you weren't. No. So the answer is, it never comes up. Why? Because if you got some facts to say and you're interested in influencing someone, so say it. Why? Because if you're gonna have me live some kind of lifestyle for some nebulous promise and play on my fear factors, okay, so that means I've got, you want to know where hell is? Hell's here. Why? Because I got 50 years of like trusting that we're not like being sold a bill of goods. That's 50 years of that. Whereas if you got facts, so you're saying whatever's going to happen afterwards, we could talk about. But you got 50 years now, Mr. 20-year-old or Miss 20-year-old or 25-year-old. You got 50 years now to fill up. What are you going to fill it up with? Well, let me tell you some facts. And we're going to go into those facts in a minute. But let me tell you some facts of how to fill your time in this world. And there's another reason why we don't bring up the afterlife, which I think is important for y'all to know. And that is because it is very presumptuous to tell somebody that you know what their afterlife is going to be based on their behavior. As our sages tell us, you can buy your next world in a moment. Did I say buy? You can acquire. Sorry, I was just literally translating Hebrew, but it's you can acquire your world in 1 minute. You can spend your whole life in drunken debauchery and turn your heart around in 1 moment of teshuvah. You could also not even repent in that 1 minute. You could be here for totally different reasons altogether. And the only reason you were brought in this incarnation was to hand someone something at just the right time. And then all of a sudden he gets sick and dies. And he's like, I don't know why is this guy dying? And the answer is because he was only brought here for one thing. Now, that's obviously a really weird thing to do, but we don't understand incarnations. So obviously this guy who handed something to someone else at 19 years old and then got sick and died, but he was the only one who could have handed it to him. And it had to be handed. It was very important for whatever cosmic reason. But you might say, well, that's not fair to the parents. The parents have to bury their child. And they say, oh, look who knows so much about who's supposed to be doing what. Those parents, it could have been 300 years ago that those parents had some kind of interaction in the world such that they would have to bury their child and come back 300 years later to bury their child. And so God didn't want to be cruel to this child. So what did he do? He had him have a very simple job here. And that was his only job. Wasn't he kosher? Wasn't he to keep Shabbat? It wasn't to do anything but hand that thing to that person, to be that in that pivotal moment in the mountains that day. And so we don't understand anything, which is another reason why we're not talking about afterlife. Because who the hell are you talking about afterlife? What do you know about what we're doing here and what we're all here for real? We don't know those those answers. So why would I discuss it? Do we believe there's an afterlife? Well, it's as sure as you're consciously listening to this class, you know your consciousness will outlast your body, because your conscious doesn't seem to care about your body, does it? You know, there it is all the time. You're thinking about a bird. Okay, are you a bird? No, you're a conscious being thinking about a bird. Could we trace you thinking about a bird on a brain scan? Yes. Can we trace that there's a you? Can we trace the you thinking about the bird? No. Doesn't show up on brain scans, doesn't show up in MRIs. Consciousness is the second biggest kasha. Sorry, I never seem to have the right word for kasha in English. It's the second biggest attack on atheists. The first biggest, obviously, is the Big Bang, because if you're an atheist, having a beginning is a major problem. You're not supposed to have beginnings, because if you have a beginning, it means there was nothing before, and nothing makes nothing. But the second biggest question on atheists is the fact that you have a conscious being that doesn't show up physically. They can't explain consciousness. And by the way, this is admitted. This is admitted, meaning they have all kinds of theories. They have to theorize because they're stuck. But they don't know what they have no idea what consciousness is. It does not show up in the brain. And so I think we're ready a little bit to go a little further now. So yeah, let's go a little further. So what is the difference between religion and Judaism? So the difference is that number one is that facts, there's certain facts. One of those facts is there's a God, but part of those facts of there being a God means just because there's a God doesn't give you any idea what he wants. You have no idea what God wants. And please excuse me using a gender in 2022, because the only reason we call God he is because the archetype of masculine is causal and the archetype of feminine is receive. So when my wife gives me dinner, when I sit down, she's in the masculine. And when I receive it, I'm in the feminine. Okay, this is just the way it goes. And God is causing creation to exist. We certainly are not doing that. So we are all in the feminine. That's right. All men are in the feminine when it comes to your relationship with God. He's causing, you're receiving. But of course, in Hebrew, we change God's name to the feminine when we give thanks, because now we're giving. And so God now is referred to in the feminine when we're giving things. Modim anachnu lach. So one of those facts is that there is God. Well, that there is God, you have to extrapolate, but we know there's nothing before there's something. And since nothing made something, so it must be whatever that nothing is some kind of consciousness, because if you look at the world, it's vibrating in mathematical equations, which are clearly showing there's a consciousness, the world itself is a conscious universe. And in fact, your consciousness causes all kinds of crazy stuff. So another cool fact is that not only is there nothing before there's something, which is clearly conscious, that another reason it's clear conscious is that there would never be a world if it wasn't, because if before there was something, there was nothing. Well, what's the propensity of nothing? It stays nothing. Nothing doesn't become something, it stays nothing. But yet here we are in a space-time continuum. You want to tell me that nothing wasn't conscious? Obviously it was conscious. It must be whatever that nothingness is, some kind of consciousness. Well, isn't that interesting that the same nothing, that's infinite consciousness, isn't that interesting that we consciously are contemplating this being with consciousness? And giraffes aren't contemplating this. Giraffes can't contemplate where they're from. Conscious beings contemplate where they're from. And what do we wind up contemplating? The fact that before there was something, there was nothing. And that nothing made something. Well, the only way nothing made something is if it's conscious. Well, isn't that interesting that I have a consciousness that doesn't take up space and time, doesn't show up in an MRI, doesn't show up in brain scans, that I have a consciousness that can't help but consider that we come from a consciousness. Oh, wow. Well, I wonder where my consciousness came from. Oh, perhaps it came from that consciousness. Well, that brings us to another amazing part. You ready for this, Shlomi Marmelstein? Ready to take it to the next level? Who the hell are you, bro? Who are you? Meaning, if I mean, you're clearly not your jacket, and you're not your name. You have a name, but that's not you. I mean, you certainly like one flavor over another. Okay, fine, but we could probably trace that back to something that happened when you were a kid or something. Like, who are you? In the end, who you are is this conscious being. Okay, well, what's that? Well, we don't know. We just know it transcends time and space. Oh, so who are you? Answer begins with a G dash D. Except you're not God, but yet your consciousness is. Because he must have like a really big consciousness, and he took a little scooper and put a little in each one of you. You know, everyone got a little scoop of God inside of them. And so you are born and built. You're built. You're born with a fiber optic link to the infinite. You're born with a fiber optic link to the infinite, which is only circumvented by your thoughts. It's only circumvented by your thoughts. In other words, your thoughts are the enemy. Now, you can have thoughts that aren't enemy. There's 3 types of thoughts. There's thoughts of holiness. Those aren't the enemy. There's thoughts of like, neutral stuff like business and stuff. Could be an enemy. It depends how much real estate you want to give it. Could be an enemy. It could kind of take over. How do you know? Is when you're doing your thoughts of holiness, do you get bombarded by thoughts of money, thoughts of business, thoughts of, relationships? Like, are you getting bombarded because you gave up too much real estate and it's encroaching on your holy thoughts? And then there's obviously forbidden thoughts. We have plenty of those as well. And so you have consciousness, which is part of God. Then you have thoughts. Well, thoughts are clearly the enemy, because that's what can get in the way of your fiber optic link to God. So how do you make sure your thoughts don't mess you up? The answer is this: start filtering what you're willing to think about. Tread lightly on your soul. Be gentle. What are you willing to think about? Everything has a time that it's permitted, so maybe you can think about it then or now, but like, you want to be careful with your mental real estate. You know what I call it? I call it mental hygiene. As opposed to dental hygiene. It's mental hygiene. And it's not so hard to monitor. All you got to do is just see when you're in a holy moment. Like, for example, we'll be coming up to Shabbat in a few days, and you're praying. Just check out your thoughts. Like, are you staying engaged in your prayers? You could do it on a weekday prayer too, but Shabbat's like the real acid test, because you're not even allowed to speak about business. All the neutral stuff's out on Shabbat. You're not allowed to really go there. Not allowed to speak about it. Not allowed. You got to keep yourself in the holiness. So when you get quiet on Shabbat for your prayer, and you're getting hijacked by thoughts that I got hijacked last Shabbat. I'll tell you, I got hijacked because I've been an addict for not an addict, but a bit of an addict for this giant sporting event. You guys know there's a giant sporting event going on the whole globe right now. I keep tuning in to see the score. It's the event. It's between the civil liberty people versus the regime that wants to take away our civil liberties. And the somehow in the last period of time, they stopped canceling as many of the civil liberty types. So they're gaining ground. Sadly, they could just be turned off at any time, because we all saw them turned off until Biden became president. Everyone got shut down, at least till he was president. After he was president, they started letting everyone back onto Twitter and back onto YouTube and back onto Facebook. And you got to come back. But do you guys remember that, even that people were sending emails where any word that would catch you, they would put like a number or something in the middle of the word, so the algorithms wouldn't catch you mentioning a word, so you wouldn't get thrown off of something. We already forgot that happened with our 3-day memory. We're already back to freedom of speech. But how long is that going to last? How long do you think this will last? But anyway, I've been a bit of an addict keeping the score. And I realized while I was in my prayers on Shabbat, I was thinking about the, just maybe with Omicron, our team's gaining ground. With Omicron, the civil liberty people are gaining ground. And that was my thought on Shabbat. And I stopped right there, and I was like, that's what you're going to think about right now, in the middle of prayers? And I stopped, and I went right back to my prayer book and reconnected to reality. So anyway, but I noticed that I didn't stop. So I gotta, oh, by the way, when this all happened, when I said the words V'tahir libenu la'avdecha be'emes, purify my heart to serve you in truth. That's when I was thinking about the scorekeeping between the civil liberty people and the zombies. And it was and by the way, you should know I'm not anti-vax. I'm not anti the corona vaccine or any of that stuff. I'm only civil liberties. That's all I'm talking about, is civil liberty. That's my thing. By the way, would there have been a Yom Tov Glazer if there wasn't an America? Would there have been a Yom Tov Glazer if there wasn't a California with like extreme civil liberty? Now it's all the opposite. But you understand? Would I have ever thought to become an observant Jew if I wasn't raised knowing that me as an individual can be self-determining? Would I ever dreamt of becoming an observant Jew? Would you be listening to this class right now? You understand? So when I see civil liberties getting encroached, you know what I feel like? I feel like I'm this being that like can't touch a certain chemical, but if it touches me, I start to melt and then I disappear. And so, meaning like in some sci-fi movie where there's this thing that you can't get near, and if I get near it, I melt into nothing. You know what that is? That is any encroachment on civil liberty, on freedom of speech, self-expression, self-determination, autonomy. You get what I'm talking about? Do you notice I keep not saying human rights? I'm being careful with that word because that's the word that's been abused beyond belief in the last 2 years. Rights. Rights are what has had all of us apologizing now. It's a whole amazing subject, and we're not going to talk about it now. But you understand what I'm talking about when it comes to why. So if you're expressing yourself Jewishly in some way or another, if you're Jewish listening to this particular episode, even though you may not be this civil liberty Yom Tov Glazer, you just know your entire lifestyle of your community, your family requires heaping amounts of civil liberties. Requires it. We've never done well, and we are target number one. Jewish people who are observant are target number one. They're just walking around with a target on their forehead. When society turns, group mentality as opposed to civil liberty. You know what's ironic about all of this? You know what's ironic about this, Avi? Shlomi? You know what's ironic is that the is that the ultra-Orthodox community, the black hat world, is so not into individuality. It's really funny because we're capitalizing or taking advantage of a country that's all about the individual, so therefore you can't mess with anyone. And then we live in full group mentality with no like fertilizing and watering and shining sun onto individuals. Like none of that. It's total herd mentality. And we only exist because the nation that founded us were Bible people they were the Bible people called the founding fathers were Bible people. And they saw in the Bible that man's created in the image of God. And you can't mess with that. There is inalienable rights. And so our community only exists based on that, because as you don't have to be a history buff to know what the hell we've been through. But go ahead and Google it. I don't know, put in history of Jewish massacres, or put in history of Jewish exiles or expulsions. That's a better word. History of Jewish expulsions. Go get a 5-minute education on YouTube or something, and you'll see what we've been through. So we exist in the civil liberties of the individual, but yet living full group mentality. It's ironic. You think about that? Is it crazy? What is wrong with this picture? I'll tell you this much, though. I've been raising, still raising, a very, devoted Hasidic family, very devoted Hasidic family. Each of my kids, it's like, oh my gosh, they're gonna take whatever I gave them. They're gonna put me in their back pocket. Think where I got to learning Aleph Bet at 23. Imagine being raised by me, dipped in my home. I mean, these kids are gonna be like, monsters of changing the world. So what I wanted to say about it was so I sent my oldest son, when it was his turn to go to yeshiva, I sent him actually to Europe, to Belgium, to a yeshiva called Wilreich. It's a very Hasidic, very frum yeshiva. I sent him there. This is the third time someone's calling him and make sure it's not an emergency. So anyway, I sent him to Europe, and he spent his first week there. And I asked him after the first week, we spoke on the phone, and I said, so what's it like? He's like, it's great. I said, but what's it like being raised in our house versus all the kids you're meeting in these yeshivas? They're from these kids were either from Belgium, from Stamford Hill, some communities in other communities in Europe. He said, I realized that you raised each one of us as if we were your only child. That's what he said. You raised each one of us as if we were your only child. In other words, individual. And we really did it. And you want to know something? I was driving up north yesterday with my 18-year-old son. And he said to me, what's better for my kids? I'm going to have to raise kids soon. Should I raise them like you raised us, where we get to just fully discover ourselves and be choosers, be awake, be and we gave them a lot of slack. We gave them a lot of rope to go figure themselves out with. Should I raise my kids like that? Oh no, first he asked me, he says, if you had raised me the way the kids who I grew up with in our Hasidic community, if you had raised me like them, he says, do they ever wake up? And I said, yeah, they all wake up. Like they get married around 18 and they wake up somewhere, I don't know, they're like 25, 26. They finally look at their father-in-law and their parents and like, I'm not going to live my life for these people. What's life about? And then they start waking up and they have this whole like, what's life about? He says, you took a major risk raising us as individuals. If we were going to wake up anyway in our mid 20s, 30s, if we were going to wake up anyway, why didn't you just take the robot route of the rest of our community? Why didn't you just do the robot route and play it safe? And he says, what should I do with my kids? Do I take the risk or do I, or should I robot them and knowing they're going to like wake up one day from the dream of their, brainwash? So I didn't have an answer for him, but I did say to him that keeping the mitzvahs as a Jew, keeping the commandments means nothing if you didn't choose. It doesn't mean anything if you didn't choose it. So there's a lot of mitzvahs that are done between bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah in 25. You're willing to let go of that. You're willing to have those mitzvahs not really mean much because they weren't based on anything other than religion. And that's what I said at the very intro of this whole class was that I thought when I was at Asia Torah, because everything was facts. And so I thought the only religious Jews I knew were Reformed Jews. Why? Because there they are lighting their Hanukkah candles and they have no idea why. You do it because they're religious. They're the religious Jews. We're not religious. We're observant Jews. We observe the realities. There's realities on the ground. A human being couldn't have written those books. Those books aren't writable by human beings. I'm not going to go into those details, but there's three major subjects. Is there God or is there not a God? Which I've been discussing. I have been discussing that lately. Then there's, is the Torah man-written or God-written? Meaning, are we believing an individual like religions, or was the whole nation there? You hear what I'm not? Remember the difference between religion and a cult is how many people? Do you know how many people were at the foundation of Judaism? Well, we know one thing. They did an actual census that there were 600,000 able-bodied men. Well, when you count all the kids, and you count all the elderly, and you count all the women, you're at 3 million. 3 million people there. Nobody's coming out of a cave for you to believe something. It's 3 million people. And 3 million people, it's like, how do you make that up? And also, you can make it up, but don't say they were there. You understand? Don't say there were 3 million. Drop that part. Drop the 3 million people part at Mount Sinai. Why? Because you could never create it. How would you ever introduce the religion? Hi. Okay, you may not know about this, but your great-great-great-grandparents were. Yeah, and it's not that far back. Don't forget to go from. We already know the Jews were in Israel right after the Mount Sinai experience. For example, just go to King David. That's, what is that? 300 years from Sinai is King David. Is that right? Yeah, about 300. No, maybe a little less, 200 years. I don't remember how many. Sorry, I'm not good with that. But a couple hundred years. We have coins of King David. Okay, we have he was the king of Israel. And Israel, you only could have 200 years that you have to go into some town, find the people, and tell them that they're the grandchildren. You're the great-great-grandchildren, or you're the great-great-great. Like, you're not going very far. And then they'll be like, yeah, the great-great-grandchildren of who? People who experienced the most massive, unique, prophetic experience, surround sound, omnimax, Dolby, 3D, LSD, blow away experience in the history of humanity at Mount Sinai. You can't just walk into a town and tell them that they're the grandchildren of a population of 3 million people when not one person in any of that community knows what the hell you're talking about. And inside that book, it's got like, oh, and by the way, put on these black boxes. I've never seen any black boxes. What are you going black boxes? Well, you're going to go up to your Uncle Joe, who's like, 70 years old, and say, Uncle Joe. And there's this dude telling us that we were somewhere that I never heard we were there, but I'll ask you, like, were we there? Because you're 2 generations above me. So were we there? He'd be looking at you like, what? Let me see that book. He opens up the book and he turns randomly to the fact that you can't plant for an entire year. Like, what are we going to die? And then the next line says, oh, and when you wonder what you'll eat on the 7th year and the 8th year till you harvest, if you wonder what you're going to eat during those years, well, I'm going to focus my blessing on the 6th year and give you a triple crop to eat throughout the 6th year, the whole 7th year, and the 8th year till you harvest. That's what's in the book of the guy who says we were somewhere we weren't a couple generations after Mount Sinai. You understand? Like, you can't make that kind of stuff up. So unlike unlike religion, that when you boil it down, you get a cult and you have to believe somebody. And of course, they're going to hold the afterlife as the key to the whole tradition. You got Judaism that only talks about facts. Never would be presumptuous about afterlife. Never harm anybody. Just come to the world to teach peace and love and the power of individuality. A tradition that teaches that we were there, something you could never, ever implement. And then go ahead and civilize the planet. Did you know that if you line up the Jewish people who were at Mount Sinai, if you line them up and turn them into a nation, and then you just go to Nobel Prizes, so meaning you make America be a nation, but you got to remove all the Jews that got a Nobel Prize. Russia's a nation, and you got to remove all the Jews because they're going to get they're a nation. We're a nation. The fact that the guy was in the former Soviet Union when he got his Nobel Prize doesn't make him not part of the Jewish nation. If you just gave us our own column for a nation in Nobel Prizes for helping the world, did you know that where America ends and where Russia ends in their name list, did you know that the Jews, you could tape down your scroll button because it'll just keep going and going and going and going. You can go online and check it out. It just keeps going and going and going and going. It's crazy. It's crazy. And yet we're forgiving. You know, the terrorist who came in to hold those people hostage in Texas, the first thing the rabbi did was make him tea, before he realized he was about to be held hostage. A Jew will make the terrorist tea. Muslim walks into a synagogue, he gets tea. Okay, I'm going to take questions. I could keep going. You guys know, like, we could just keep going and going and going. So I'm going to take a few questions. I think I'll start with YouTube today. Got a hello. No, I'm not going to talk about seminal retention right now, but maybe another time. Shalom. I'm glad I get to catch one of these live. Well, great. I'm glad you're with me. I wish I knew how to tell YouTube that it's going to happen. Here's one, Rabbi Yom Tov Glazer. Do Gentiles also have soulmates? You bet they do. Yeah, Gentiles have soulmates. They have different rules regarding. The Jews have very, very strict rules of how you bond with a soulmate and release that soulmate if things don't work out. If you don't do those, you stay bonded. Meaning, if you don't bond right, it doesn't bond. That's one thing. So you're married like civilly, but you never bonded. See, there's certain things you must do to create the bond. And without it, it doesn't create the bond. But there's also, what if someone created the bond, meaning they did the things that you need to have to create the bond, but then they did a civil divorce. Guess what? They're bound forever still. It's a little looser though for Gentiles. Gentiles have to live in committed relationships. Having a civil marriage is such a great sign of, meaning having an actual marriage is such a sign of that commitment, and it's highly recommended. But it doesn't make the difference whether you're bound together because you both committed, whether there's witnesses, no witnesses. It's a lot easier to be bound together, and also to release that bond if things didn't work out. Also, doesn't require a bunch of like Kabbalistic detail. It's just to make a decision that you're not going to stay together, and then move on to the next person who you'll be fully committed to. So I'm going to check out that article, Avi. Can you resend it so it gets back to the top? You just put an arrow. And by the way, anyone who WhatsApps me, if you ever WhatsApp me, I'll give you my number again. If you WhatsApp me, make sure if I don't answer you, it's probably because, my WhatsApp got bombarded by some other people, and that's okay. Just don't get dramatic. Just send it again a day later, like 24 hours later. So I put my number there on YouTube, and then put it here on Zoom as well. Well, we don't have to do that. I think the Zoomers know my number more or less. Oh, no, they don't. So not everyone. I do WhatsApp. And I just really please ask you to return, to send an arrow within 24 hours. If it's urgent and you need it that day, 2 arrows. That lets me know this is because what happens is if it gets avalanched by other messages, it brings it right back to the top. Also, I don't know who's watching this, but I would like to take this. Do you guys realize, Avi, you ever think about it when I speak, that it would be good if I were on some of those big podcasts out there? Do you understand that I'm articulate in those same subjects, but you'll never get someone who looks like me with my background on the big podcasts, with like Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson. Joe Rogan just interviews people, but you realize that he would have a good time interviewing me. We would have a good time together. We have the same exact background. We're from the same town. We're both surfers. We're the exact same age, and we both are like, take no prisoners. We just say it as it is. There's a couple other things we have in common, but I'll leave those nameless right now. But we're like, I feel like we're meant to be together, the two of us. But I have no idea. I'm so busy running my seminars. And just letting everybody know, I'll be in New York starting Saturday. Go to my website, rabbayomtov.com, and click on the Possible You and get registered to the seminar. That's going on in New York on Sunday's going to be a men's seminar, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then following week on the 30th will be the women's seminar, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are all non-work hours. We're going to be spending 25 hours together to go to the real truth of reality. It's not like these classes. These classes we're discussing worldview. Not a lot of worldview there. It's called the Possible You. And then I'm doing an executive mission that week, the same week the women's seminar is going on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know if Shlomi, you want to be part of that, or maybe Max, I don't know, but we're going to be doing the mission. But this particular one's going to be executive. It's like brunch and like a little bit on the fancy side. It's going to be like 15 dedicated people to come do it. And the mission is, what's your mission in life? We actually can get to literally pinpoint your mission while you're here. It's nothing to do with how you make a living, nothing to do with your family, nothing to do with your mission. What's your legacy on this planet? I'm going to be running that in a much more affordable way. This is kind of we're starting with an executive one. I'm not sure why, but we are. And then I'll take a few more questions. Is it good for Gentiles to study Kabbalah? So traditionally, Gentiles didn't study Kabbalah. It happens to be that there's certain Gentile traditions which have truckloads of Kabbalah involved. For example, Eastern traditions like Hinduism, Buddhism have like truckloads of mysticism. So is that not Kabbalah? I think that's Kabbalah. But to study the Jewish Kabbalah, it's actually frowned upon for Gentiles to study it. I don't know if that's still the case, because we don't have really rabbis big enough today to make that decision. But today, Gentiles are much more versed in the esoteric. And so maybe, yes, I don't, but the only tradition I know about is that Gentiles are not to study Kabbalah. The next is, really appreciate your generosity in letting us ask questions. You're welcome. Shalom, Rabbi. Oh, someone asked me to discuss converting to Judaism. Yeah, so, I mean, you got to be nuts to do that. Converting to Judaism is like, I mean, it's just such a crazy thing to do. You got to be like suicidal. But once in a while, you meet someone who's like, like if the conversion rabbis would say, if you convert, you're going to be killed tomorrow for being Jewish. If you'd still convert, then yes, you should convert to Judaism. But otherwise, why would you bother? I mean, God is so awesome. Like, doesn't require you to be a Jew for you to freak out on how awesome Hashem is. And if you want to freak out on how awesome Hashem is, listen to yesterday's class. That's what we did yesterday. Anyway, don't be OCD. Like, why do you have to keep 613 commandments which breaks down to 35,000 laws? Like, you sure you're normal? Like, you really want to be part of that? So it's enough just to be into God. God's amazing. Like, it's like, why make yourself crazy? And then you're gonna be like, then you're gonna convert, and then you're like, oh, they don't really accept me. And then you're gonna get all dramatic about whether the Jews accept you. It's like, spare yourself the agony. My goodness. Like, and then your kids, these days trying to get your kids into the Jewish schools. It's like, we're in no condition to be like properly respecting and honoring converts the way they deserve. Converts deserve tremendous respect, tremendous honor. They should be, put on a pedestal for their incredible self-sacrifice to become Jewish. And we're so not geared for that. Like, I'm personally geared for that, but I don't have a community. I'm a street rabbi, So, like, if you run into me, you're always going to get a hug, But I can't like admit your kids into the school that doesn't admit, and by the way, don't think it's like they don't admit converts. They don't admit the kids of people who were raised secular, Jews raised secular became observant, are also on the outside looking in. You understand? It's like, just spare yourself the agony if you can. But you may not be able to spare yourself the agony. It could be it's a monkey on your back and you're not going to be okay until you finally give the monkey something to say, and it says, I do, meaning I'm converting. So if the monkey wants to convert, I'm not going to stop it. But and it's quite an adventure, by the way. You have no idea what happens when you convert. It's crazy. Stuff starts happening to converts. That's like nutty stuff. I know a convert who just got converted and got sick and died. You know, and he was so clear. He was like, I just had to convert, and that was the end of my life. And that was all I needed. He said it, told it to me. He's told it to everybody. Just had to convert, and then he was going to get sick and die. And he'd die as a Jew. And that was his thing. He was perfectly happy with it. It's crazy. Okay, let me see how much I can handle the rest of these questions here. There's a bunch of good questions today. We did good with questions. Can a Jewish soul be born into a Gentile body? Is that a thing? You bet it's a thing. Those are the converts. Our sages tell us that anyone who converts to Judaism, I'm not talking about, Christina Cross converts to Judaism to marry her Beverly Hills Jewish boyfriend. Not that one. None of the real converts are, so our sages tell us that they are incarnated from, meaning their soul was at Sinai. Their soul was at Sinai. Can you discuss converting Jews? And I did that. We did that. I really appreciate. Yes. Shalom Rabbi. So good. Oh, hello. Shalom Aleichem. Hey Ranan, how you doing? Oh, here's someone. Lara says, I'm a sworn Noahide. That means she keeps the 7 and she's into God. And I try to study Kabbalah. It's very hard to understand. Yes, it's very hard to understand. I apologize, on behalf of the Kabbalists, but they created it in a way that it wouldn't be bad for people. So it was written very cryptically. And you can't really understand it without a teacher who guides you in it. But nevertheless, there's plenty to glean. And then, someone said, we get these people who think we're supposed to come back to Jesus. By the way, I want everyone to know that even though I spoke strongly about religion today, I do not expect that someone who's had a divine encounter with anything, with Jesus or with an idol, or if you're a Hindu, you had a divine experience with a cow. Right now in India, everyone's having a divine experience with a cow because a cow was born with 3 eyes. So it's like this huge thing going on in India. I would never, ever speak to anyone in a derogatory way when they themselves have had an intimate spiritual experience. Intimate spiritual experiences require no logic. You understand? Once you've had that, and by the way, what do you think's easier to have an intimate spiritual experience, with God or with an intermediary? Which one would you say? Everyone's muted, so put your thumbs up for God. Which one's easier? Having a spiritual connective experience with an infinite being or with an intermediary? Thumbs up for intermediary. Yes, intermediary. It's a hell of a lot easier. And so, but once you've had that, it's incontrovertible. And there's a term for this that's used. It's usually used in the psychedelic community, but it's called noetic. Noetic is where you know something, even though you could never explain it and it makes no logical sense, but it's noetic. I got a WhatsApp last week that some guy did psychedelics, and he discovered that he is God. And now, obviously, this was a high IQ guy. So by the time the medicine wore off, what he realized was God's within him. You understand? But he still had a noetic thing that's you can't argue with it. It's incontrovertible because there's no logic, there's no words for it. You had a direct experience. Is that clear? So it's important that people realize that whenever I discuss religion, I'm being very, very empiricistic, logical. I'm speaking as in logic. I'm not speaking about your subjective noetic experience. And by the way, I've had plenty of noetic experiences, both with the Creator and in states of mediums. Not forbidden ones, obviously, because Jews keep it super clean. And but I've witnessed it. And I've specifically been in a state where I said, that's not my connection. My connection's there. But boy, was I seeing how that connection would be a lot more tangible than an infinite being. Oh my gosh, way more tangible. And that now you have the noetic thing. Now you think everyone else has to have it. That's just the nature of the beast. Yeah, that's just the nature of things. But today we're speaking very logically, and I would never put down someone's noetic experience. I'm not going to answer this question, but it was, why is it that the Jews should want to keep the commandments, but no one else? First of all, Jews do not want to. You mean, why do Jews have to? That's a very Kabbalistic answer. It's too much for right now. You can feel free to ask it again, put it at the top of tomorrow's class or whatever. It's a specific thing. I like what Nazir Mash said, is we lack respect for converts because we lack love for the Most High. That's so well said, Nazir. Very well said. And but we don't blame the people who lack love for the Most High, because the only way you can love is if you're safe to be vulnerable. And there's very few people in the Jewish community who are safe to be vulnerable after their history. There's a major collective pain, what Eckhart Tolle would call the pain body, what I call in the Possible You, the misery comfort zone. But it becomes cumulative, transgenerationally in communities. And once your pain body or your misery comfort zone's high enough, you cannot truly love. And so that also will affect your love for God. And once you don't have love for God, so then good luck loving the convert, which is a commandment to love the convert. It's one of the 613. Going on. Why isn't everyone born Jewish? Everyone was born Jewish until, meaning everyone was born a child of Adam until things went south, with the flood and the Tower of Babel, and then God decided to switch gears and go for a pilot nation. You realize that God created the world for the world, not for some Jewish nation. It was created for the world. But when we got to 1948 from Adam, which is easy to remember because that's the founding of the state of Israel. When we got to 1948, God decided to switch gears, and it had been 10 generations of idolatry after the flood. It was like, God's just like, forget this. And we're not going to have everyone be chosen. We're going to create a pilot nation through Abraham, do a little breeding process, breed out Ishmael, which is 20 generations at that point, because Adam to Noah's 10 generations, and Noah to Abraham's 10 generations. So 20 generations breed off to Ishmael using a Canaanite who are very, chesed oriented. And then we're going to do so that there can be a Yitzchak who's purely Gevura. I'm not translating now. And then we're going to do a 20-year filtration breeding process from Yitzhak to create to filter off 20 generations of Gevura into Esav, the twins, Jacob and Esau, so that there can be an Esav, and then the second born will be Jacob, who's going to be right in the middle. And he's going to have the 12 tribes. They're going to go into slavery. They're going to learn how to serve as opposed to rebel, which is idolatry. And they'll learn how to serve at the UOE, the University of Egypt. And then they'll have all these there will be plagues and mirror splitting seas, and then the THX surround sound rendezvous, the only place in the world you could tell 3 million people a secret, the Sinai Desert. And I bless everyone to go visit the Sinai Desert. It's amazing, amazing place. No one knows where Mount Sinai itself is because it's a small mountain surrounded by bigger ones. And no one knows where it is because there's a lot of those scenarios in Sinai. Although they do have a monastery, a Christian monastery on a giant mountain, but they didn't, because they don't know oral tradition, they didn't know it was a small, humble mountain, like the small, humble Moses who received the Torah. Anyway, but we were all born Jewish, so to speak. It was only because things went south that God decided to run things through his pilot nation. By the way, the pilot nation blew it and went through hell as a result. We didn't, the Jews didn't pull it off. We blew it. And God destroyed the whole orb of light that we were supposed to be a light to the nations. He blew it to smithereens, put a little spark of light in every Jew. Those are the Nobel Prize types. Put a spark in every Jew, but every Jew, because every Jew only prays for peace. Put a spark in every Jew and sent us into exile. So, okay, you can't be an orb of light. You blew being an example for the world. Okay, so go out there and seed the world with moral virtue, with ethical monotheism. Seed the world. See what happens. Now we're already in stage 4. Stage 4 is the rebuilding of Israel back into the land, going back into the land. Jewish people. Maybe I'll play y'all a song. You guys want a song? I'm not going to answer more questions now. We'll play a little song and then I'm going to go. Y'all want a song? Oh. My zipper's broken. Here we go, man. We're gonna do a little song. Put the mic in the middle. Max, you'll tell me how my balance is, please. Turn up the gain a little bit. Drink a little water. See if I'm in tune. Hey Siri, open Guitar Tuna. Come on, man. My guitar's freezing. By the way, Jerusalem's freezing right now. Below 0. Feels so bad. You want to hear something crazy? The whole country turned on a drip of water throughout the night, so their solar water on the roof. Israel does solar heating for water, so that it shouldn't freeze and break. You know, it's so expensive to have that thing burst. The ice forms until it bursts. So when things thaw out in the morning, you start seeing water from all the burst pipes. But guess what? The only ones who have bursted solar water things are the Haredim, the black hat world. You know why? Because they're not on internet, so they have no idea what the weather's going to be, which is really tribal and cool and ancient to like have no idea whether it's going to rain or snow or warm. They have no idea. Like, let's see what God brings. You know, it's like totally living in the moment. But the rest of Israel turned on a drip on their water so it wouldn't crack. So I have like the poorest neighbors, and like several of them have, you know, thousands of dollars, not thousands of shekels. Like it's like 2,000-3,000 shekels to get that thing fixed up. Actually, you know, it shouldn't be that much, but it's probably like close to 1,000. And they need someone to diagnostically figure out where all the cracks are and stuff. But there's plenty of them. Speaking of which, if anyone ever wants to help people, right now I have 2 totally destitute people who both have good jobs in education, but they're making weddings. I told them I would help out. So this is me helping out. So if anyone would like to be, to help out people making weddings, if you saw these two, you just wouldn't believe it. One's in Mea Sharim, which is like the most tribal part of Israel, in Jerusalem. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but those of you who visited Israel who are with me, you ever seen in Mea Sharim, you'll see these white blonde Hasidim from Toldos Aaron, like super white with white eyes. They almost are albino. They're not albino though, but they're super blonde. They're completely Nordic. For sure, they had major genetic Nordic genes of some kind of converts. Anyway, but they're part of Toldos Aaron. Anyway, one of them is one of those beautiful Jews is an old friend of mine, because my wife created over 100 micro businesses for poor families to make a living. And one of them was called the Jerusalem Sewing Cooperative. And his wife managed the seamstresses. And she created micro businesses for all these women. Okay, here we go. Anyway, so I haven't heard from him in 10 years, but now he's making a wedding. All ready? Oh man, how am I going to do this? People are still joining the Zoom, and I want to admit them, but I got to play my strings. Okay. Here we go. The Hebrew of this song is from Zion. The Torah comes out of Zion, and the word of God from Jerusalem. Kimitzion, because from Zion comes the Torah. Kimitzion, Teitzei Torah, Udevar Hashem, and the word of God from Jerusalem. Got it? Yeah. Kimitzion. You can learn the words if you're not Jewish, so try this Hebrew. Kimitzion, Teitzei Torah. Kimitzion, Teitzei Torah. Because from Jerusalem comes the Torah. The Torah comes out. Udevar Hashem, and the word of God from Jerusalem. This song is about showing up to the Western Wall with long hair and a guitar. In the city of gold, I left a little prayer pressed inside your walls of stone. And I pledged my heart to carry out your will if you'd only make it known. Patiently, you waited until I could hear the tune. Kimitzion, Teitzei Torah, Udevar Hashem, Yerushalayim. Kimitzion, Teitzei Torah, Udevar Hashem, Yerushalayim. When the seven gates sweeps the seven gates. When the seven gates oh my gosh, I never forgot these words before. The seven gates. The old, I lost it because I was thinking I got to explain to everybody that the old city of Jerusalem has seven gates. I can't remember. When the seven gates, and the stars light up the sky, I can hear your voice whispering on the wind when I stop to hear the cry. When Jerusalem, your inspiration feeds a hungry world. Kimitzion, Teitzei Torah, Udevar years. I've been living here 30 years now. And I've been noticing that whoever comes here is like into something. And I'm happy they're into something, but something about being in Jerusalem, that something is like, just kind of goes way down on the priority list of importance. You know, you might be into golf or money, weed, surfing. People of the opposite gender, if you're a young kid. And after about a few weeks here, or months, you like wake up one day, you're like, why am I not interested in that anymore? And you finally realize you were just distracting yourself. Because the soul, when it's fulfilled, it's like, there's no restlessness in your heart. And when you live in Jerusalem, you're just so whole. You can choose to go ride your mountain bike. You can go crank some music, but it's not a distraction. It is the most organic place. Like, you know, if you're Jewish, you can see yourself like a fruit tree. And your organic soil is the land of Israel. It's amazing. All these years, receiving people, watching the brokenhearted become whole. How many people came brokenhearted and they're whole? How many were addicted to drugs and just dropped it? In the city of gold, this perfect stranger finally feels at home. You can sing with me if you want. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah udevashem mirushalayim. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah udevashem mirushalayim. Shalom, I'm glad I got to break out my guitar finally for one of these things. Maybe I'll just leave it out. Oh, no, I have fresh strings. Putting it away, sorry. Someone in my last seminar did me the favor of stringing this guitar here. So I'm going to close it up and protect my strings. It was amazing being with everybody. Hope you loved it. And I hope it's refreshing to hear people say things true. Not that I think I'm the one who says things that are true, but I hope that I approach truth as close as possible. I also stand on the shoulder of giants because I got to spend all these decades here with people hammering out these topics. People way smarter than me. And I hope I do them justice when I share the words with y'all. But thank God for technology, and we should always use it for the good. Shalom, everybody. Lots of love. Let me know any way you can be part of my life, or I could be part of yours. Shalom.